We begin at Chelomey, a city and research complex located on the massive flying Icarus platform. It was developed at, and currently floats above, Facility 3826, a major Soviet Union, or USSR, research and development center located in the Eastern Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, or Kazakhstan. Back in 1936, scientist Dr. Dmitry Sechenov developed a liquidized programmable module called the Polymer, sparking massive technological breakthroughs in the fields of energy and robotics in the USSR, and freeing much of the populace from manual labor. When World War II broke out, the Soviets quickly gained the upper hand, but just before Nazi Germany was defeated in 1942, they unleashed the brown plague biological virus, leaving millions dead and creating an international demand for Soviet robots to compensate for the resulting worker shortage. As part of the USSR's post-war reconstruction program, Sechenov created a wireless, networked artificial intelligence called Collective 1.0 that linked his robots together for greater efficiency. Recently, Sechenov, who serves as the head, or general director, of the facility, has developed the Thought Neural Connector, a device worn on the head that communicates with the brain via neuropolymer injected into the human body, a process known as a person becoming polymerized. Thought allows a person to utilize additional neuropolymer to instantly learn new knowledge, as well as to remotely interface with machines, effectively controlling robots with their minds. Thought is to be released alongside Collective 2.0, a worldwide upgrade to the Collective network, which Sechenov boasts will usher in a true post-labor era for the entire planet. On June 11, 1955, 2 days before the official launch of Collective 2.0, Major Sergei Nuchiev, codenamed Agent P3, a polymerized war veteran with partial amnesia who works for Sechenov, is invited to assist in the rollout of Collective 2.0 at the facility. While descending from Chelomey to the ground below, P3 observes the facility's expansive testing grounds and complexes, connected by a magnetic levitation, or maglev, train railway, before he's suddenly attacked by a flying robot, causing him to crash land at the Vavilov complex. There, he finds that robots have massacred almost all of the entire facility's human personnel, and contacts Sechenov, who explains that the cause was Collective's central hub being hacked into by Viktor Petrov, a lead engineer of Collective 2.0. He then tasks P3 with capturing Petrov alive to obtain the hub's access codes, while accompanied by his artificially intelligent, or AI, partner, Charles, or Charles, short for Chatting Artificial Librarian, which is embedded within his polymer glove. P3 is then forced to confront homicidal robots along with failed biomechanical experiments while dealing with his own growing mental instability. P3 tracks down Petrov in one of the labs, where he learns that Petrov's working with Dr. Larissa Filatova, a top-notch neurosurgeon and talented employee who works at the Academy of Consequences within the facility. Before P3 can apprehend him, Petrov flees and is seemingly killed by a robot, with P3 finding only his headless corpse. Meanwhile, the Politburo, the principal policy-making committee of the USSR, grows suspicious about what's happening within the facility, as Sechenov has been covering up the true scale of the disaster. Yegor Molotov, one of the Politburo's highest-ranking members, decides to personally inspect the facility and threatens to shut down Sechenov's Atomic Heart project. Charles explains to P3 that Sechenov and the Politburo are in a secret power struggle over who will ultimately control Collective, and that the Politburo will likely use this incident as an excuse to get rid of Sechenov, who orders P3 to intercept Molotov. Upon doing so, P3 suddenly loses consciousness, during which he experiences several hallucinations, afterward reawakening to find Molotov and his entire delegation murdered, with Sechenov informing P3 that robots killed them. Molotov's body is then disposed of using neuropolymer, which absorbs it almost completely, preserving his consciousness in polymer form, allowing for future access to its knowledge, along with its integration into Collective technology, and leaves only his skeleton and clothing behind. Sechenov then detects someone attempting to transmit a signal to the United States of America, or USA, leading him to believe that Petrov is still alive. He concludes that Filatova has revived Petrov by combining her skills and the facility's technology with his severed head, and therefore orders P3 to continue his pursuit of him. During the pursuit, Petrov communicates with P3, ranting about how Sessionov plans to kill millions of people and enslave the world with the activation of Collective 2.0, which is why he's trying to sabotage the project by informing the USA. When P3 reaches Petrov, he reveals that the rogue robots had a combat mode installed in them since the very beginning of the project and their creation, which he merely activated. Petrov then gives P3 a mysterious pair of rings, before using a robot to commit suicide, again severing his head, which Sessionov then orders P3 to collect in a portable preservation container. P3's then forced to fight and destroy a gigantic construction robot, now inexplicably armed with missiles, lending credibility to Petrov's claims. Afterward, when Sessionov asks about the rings, P3 lies, stating that Petrov had nothing on him, as he's beginning to distrust Sessionov. P3 learns that Sessionov's atomic heart plan is to take down the USA and their Western allies, using the already distributed civilian worker robots with hidden combat modes. When Collective 2.0 launches, its instantaneous polymer communication network will be used to activate the robots' combat modes, using them to seize nuclear power plants and take down infrastructure from the inside of the USA, in preparation for a massive USSR takeover. P3 then takes Petrov's head to a lab where Sessionov's assistant, Michael Stockhausen, is waiting with a machine containing more neuropolymer to assimilate Petrov's knowledge into it, finally gaining his access codes to disable the facility robot's combat modes. However, before the machine can be used, Filatova appears and destroys both it and Petrov's head using a grenade, with the resulting blast also knocking P3 and Stockhausen to the ground and leading the neuropolymer to leak out, consuming and killing Stockhausen. Afterward, P3's contacted by Filatova, who asks him to meet her in her lab at the Academy of Consequences, a part of the facility hidden far underwater, accessed via a secret entrance inside of a lighthouse. On the way to the entrance, P3's attacked by another enormous robot, and after destroying it, Charles explains to him that the two rings he got from Petrov are called beta connectors, which will allow their wearers to have a higher level of access within the Collective 2.0 system. Voicing concern about the dangers of anyone possessing the rings, especially if they were to fall into the wrong hands, Charles convinces P3 to get rid of them by throwing them into the nearby body of water. After activating the lighthouse entrance and journeying down to the Academy of Consequences via elevator, P3 meets up with Filatova, who proceeds to show him a large area containing countless human test subjects for Collective. She reveals that Collective is actually a means to rob people of their free will by connecting them to the polymer network, effectively mind-controlling them, and cannot be opted out of by removing the wearable thought device as advertised, but is instead a permanent result of the polymerization injection. Shocked at this revelation, P3 is convinced to work with Filatova to find out the truth, and together they delve deeper into the lab. There, they discover that Charles isn't actually an AI, but the mind of Professor Chariton Zakharov, Sessionov's best friend and a fellow polymer researcher who died while experimenting on his own body, leading Sessionov to preserve him in polymer and create the functional and protective glove for him to inhabit. Using Chariton's security clearance, they head into the lab's archives to learn more about P3's past, discovering that he and his wife, Ekaterina, or Katya, were both members of an elite military squad known as the Argentum Unit, where he was codenamed Agent Plutonium, and she was Agent Blesna. After they were both brutally injured and clinically deceased during a mission in Bulgaria, Sessionov was able to revive P3 using a combination of polymer and prosthetics. In order to compensate for irreparable brain damage and to eliminate P3's destructive impulses and rage triggered by traumatic memories, Sessionov implanted a Voskhod neuropolymer brain function extension device. The Voskhod forces P3's consciousness to enter a state of limbo, a hallucinated, imaginary world, filled with artificial memories, which keep him mentally calm, but also allows his body to be controlled externally, entering an on-command combat mode, similar to a robot. Sessionov was unable to revive Katya or to save her consciousness, but was able to preserve her exceptional combat skills and knowledge in both ballet and martial arts by separating and implanting the left and right hemispheres of her brain into two ballerina-type robots. Now known as the twins, right and left, they serve as Sechenov's bodyguards. Furious at these discoveries, P3 decides to go confront Sechenov, with Filatova agreeing to pose as his captive, but as they leave the lab's archives, P3 loses consciousness and enters the limbo state again. Afterward, he awakens in the care of Zinaida Maravova, or Granny Zina, a former facility communications officer, who is also his mother-in-law, by way of Katya being her daughter, and she explains to P3 that his body viciously killed Filatova while his mind was in limbo, just before she found him. P3 is then faced with a decision, either to leave the facility behind in order to try and live his own life after rejecting Sechenov's designs and his role within them, or to accept Zina's help to gear up for a final confrontation with Sechenov. If he were to choose to leave, he would destroy the glove, killing Chariton, whom he would view as the real threat instead of Sechenov, since the Voskhod was invented by him as a means of controlling people prior to the existence of Collective 2.0. P3 would then exit the facility and disappear, leaving the small polymer blob of Chariton's remains behind, and allowing Sechenov to continue with his plans to activate Collective 2.0, enabling the USSR to take over the world. However, P3 chooses to confront Sechenov, and upon re-entering the Chelomey complex, he's forced to fight left, and defeats it, but is unable to bring himself to destroy it, as it contains a living part of Katya. Upon arriving at Sechenov's office and approaching him, he orders the twins to defend him. P3 must fight both of them simultaneously, and after a fierce battle, P3 manages to defeat them, leading to a massive polymer explosion, resulting in both twins ceasing functionality as Katya's brain dies. Sechenov then aims a gun at P3 as a last resort, but P3 disarms and shoots him with it, before Sechenov explains that Chariton has been manipulating him the entire time and is responsible for accessing the Voskhod, sending him to limbo, and using his body to kill any threat to Collective. P3 attempts to destroy the glove and kill Chariton, but is prevented from doing so when Chariton electrocutes him, before emerging from the glove and entering a nearby batch of neuropolymer, taking on a humanoid form. He then explains that he now views himself as the next forceful evolution of the human race, and as such, his goal is the extinction of all humans, armed with the ability to fully control and utilize the collective polymer network, including robots, injected humans, and its vast array of knowledge. Afterward, he proceeds to approach Sechenov, lift him off the ground, and break his neck, killing him, before absorbing him into himself and leaving the facility, while P3 re-enters the limbo state, where he's able to reunite with the memory of Katya in the form of Right.